Spider-Man PS4 and its remaster are some of the best video games that I have played in recent years. Is it the definitive Spider-Man game? No, I wouldn't say so. Has it aged a bit poorly? I guess. Is it worth hating? No, not at all. The video that we're reacting to today is someone who has exactly the same opinion as me, but their reasoning is not very good, as you shall see. Let's get into it.
Some people in the community have turned against Spider-Man PS4. I remember when the game first came out, I didn't see a single negative comment from anyone in the community.
Whilst yes, the general reception for Spider-Man PS4 was overwhelmingly positive, if your only source of reference is a High Tops Films video, I would suggest that you get more references in future.
People ate up Insomniac's take on Spider-Man. In the 4 years since its release, I've only been recently made aware of the subsection of fans that hate this game.
You say that people are eating up Insomniac's take on Spider-Man as if that's a bad thing, but there really wasn't that much good Spider-Man media available back in 2018. The Spider-Man show wasn't very good, universally hated, and if you didn't like Tom Holland's take on Spider-Man like myself, you really didn't have much to look forward to other than either the recent comics or rewatching old Spider-Man content. So yes, this Spider-Man video game was a breath of fresh air and a lot of people loved it as a result. There just wasn't that much good Spider-Man content available at the time.
Now, I don't hate the game. Let's make this clear. I will tell you that when I agree or disagree with complaints made about Spider-Man PS4, in my honest opinion, Spider-Man PS4 is a really good game.
What he just said is very important and kind of the crutch of the whole issue, because I 100% agree with him. Like, I think Spider-Man PS4 is a genuinely great game, however what I care about in these videos is people's reasoning. For example, if people say Tobey Maguire is the worst Spider-Man, it might piss me off a little bit because I have a lot of nostalgia for him, but what I'm ultimately interested in is their reasoning and if it's very good or not. Spoiler alert, it really wasn't. Thank you for the support on that video, by the way.
The combat is pretty fun even if other Spider-Man games have done better, and despite the swinging being almost automated, it's pretty fun to watch Peter fly around.
The comments on the combat I do agree with. I think it was fun enough and it definitely had a lot of reactionary based combat. Similar to Arkham, but not really, because people make that misconception all the fucking time. Oh, Spider-Man was an Arkham clone. No, it really wasn't. They had different systems. Please don't lie to yourself. The swinging comments I do disagree with, however. The swinging wasn't automated. Like, the only way you can say it's automated is if you didn't engage with the game's many different swinging systems. But at the end of the day, the worst is yet to come.
I think the suits, for the most part, are a pretty mixed bag. I think if you made a suit tier list for this game, each tier would be pretty filled out. There are just as many amazing suits in this game as there are ones that are an absolute dumpster fire.
This I also completely agree with. Some suits in this game are absolutely fantastic, others not so much. However, the objective truth to this is that Spider-Man PS4 at the time had by far the largest suit roster in any Spider-Man game, to the extent where if you combined the suits from both TASM movie games, you'd have a little over half what this one title had to offer. It's clear that the developers had a lot of love for fans with all this fan service.
I think the new main Spider-Man design in this game is pretty overrated due to its wacky color choices and subpar color balancing.
I don't have a clue what you're talking about, Phil. Not a fucking clue.
I think if you were looking for a comic-accurate Spider-Man suit for the Insomniac verse, you will be left sorely disappointed, because that's not what the advanced suit was. The advanced suit took the best parts from all three live-action Spider-Men and combined them into a new design, whilst also introducing a brand new color scheme, textures, and the likes, creating a orangey red, blue, and white suit, which became instantly iconic. Is it the best Spider-Man suit ever created? No, not really. I mean, I think the new version in Spider-Man 2 completely shits on this one, and also I prefer the Raimi suit and even the TASM 2 suit, and obviously you can't beat the classic suit, but it's really not that bad.
I thought the story for the most part was pretty engaging, even if it didn't feel like it was completely new and fresh. It just sort of feels like the game doesn't do anything too new with the characters. I don't know, I just feel like I've seen some of this stuff before. I do like Otto Octavius being a scientific father figure to Peter Parker.
To be honest, you probably have seen some of this stuff before, because the fact of the matter is that Spider-Man is a 60-plus-year-old IP. It's pretty much impossible at this point to create legitimately original stories because fucking everything has happened in comics over the many different adaptations of the character. So, I guess originality is kinda hard to come by these days, but I don't think the quality was that bad.
That's a good idea. For me, It all started on Twitter.
Oh dear, I'm not excited with what he just said.
With someone I follow for their strong opinions on Spider-Man adaptations. As far as I know, the owner of this account is a Spider-Man comics connoisseur, and knows a good Spider-Man adaptation when they see one.
Yeah, not only is this just an anecdote and holds little objective reasoning, however, if what we're about to read is anything to go off of, this guy doesn't know a good adaptation when he sees one. And also, a Spider-Man connoisseur, like, I'm getting Ultimate Joker flashbacks. The supreme intelligent race.
And has been Spider-Man PS4's #1 detractor since day one.
Not gonna lie, the red flags are already here when you're willing to listen to a guy who hated Insomniac Spider-Man from day one. Like, the smart thing to do would be to listen to someone who actually studied the character in depth for weeks, maybe even months, and came to a conclusion based off that research. If someone hates a character from day one, chances are they're not all that reliable.
This is Nevermind, or Nirvana Mind on Twitter, and I've seen them criticize the game for writing Peter similarly to how Dan Slott writes Peter, but that's not much of a surprise to me since Dan Slott has been on the writing team for Spider-Man PS4.
I am slightly concerned why you would take such a strong following towards one guy's advice when he's not even that big on Twitter. Like, if it was the official comic book writers or something, I'd understand, but the reality is this guy's just a random guy. If you have a personal connection to him, then obviously that's great, but he's not exactly striking me as the most valid source. But let's go over the things that he says. It's hilarious Insomniac made the first adult Spider-Man in years and still adapted Steve Ditko's story and has little depth. Well, I'm sorry that you feel that way, but you're misrepresenting the game. Since Spider-Man at this point in time is 8 years into his career, whereas Steve Ditko's Spider-Man was literally introduced with his origin story and stuff. So, like, I feel like you're blatantly misrepresenting the game by saying shit like that. The second tweet, however, just proves my point that this guy is an Insomniac hater and shouldn't be trusted. We need Insomniac to lose the Spider-Man license. I mean, Insomniac will lose the Spider-Man license eventually. This license has been alive longer than Insomniac Games has. They're gonna lose it at some point, and at the end of the day, they have said that Spider-Man 3 is their final Spider-Man game. But what company has done just as good a job with Spider-Man than Insomniac? In all three Spider-Man games, they constantly adapt and improve upon the previous game, making the sequels a lot more fun to play. Name me what 3 Spider-Man games in the past that have legitimately built on the formula that the previous one has introduced. Not even the Raimi trilogy did that, since the first game was ass, the second game was really good, but then the third game was a step backwards. Like, Insomniac constantly improve with each game, so I don't know why you're saying that they need to lose the license. It just makes you seem like a dick. Like, yes, the games are not perfect by any means, but this is such unfair criticism that I don't think is valid considering Insomniac has done so much with the character and made 3 legitimately great games so far. Also, that tweet didn't even age well because Spider-Man PS5 literally did give us the superior Spider-Man suit, so how is Insomniac a bad company for Spider-Man when they're literally listening to the fans or introducing media that would appease said fans? Which I think is hilariously ironic because this same guy said, oh, Insomniac Spider-Man is adapting Ditko's storyline and that's bad, but then he also comes out in another tweet and says that it's only accurate to early Dan Slott Spider-Man comics, which are inherently a contradiction. Like, how can you adapt one but only be accurate to another? That doesn't make any sense at all, and it just leads you to looking even more like an Insomniac hater rather than someone with actual objective criticism. And again, I could be wrong. I'm only looking at these tweets out of context, but from what I've seen at the very least, this guy is not a valid person to look at when judging good Spider-Man adaptations. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe he's legitimately great, maybe he'll improve in the future, but this video doesn't do him much justice.
So I naturally got into contact with my first exposure to Spider-Man PS4 criticism, and I asked him a few questions. What are some of your core issues with Insomniac's Peter? What traits do you wish he borrowed from 616 Peter?
The biggest issue that comes to mind for me is Peter's demeanor. He doesn't have much of his trademark attitude.
Bro, what are you talking about, man?
There are hints of it in the DLC, where he mentions he used to be more of a loner, but that's about it. I much prefer how the comics handled him mellowing out. It wasn't a complete character change, he could still slip into those behaviors and would have to check himself. He's a bit too awkward and overly friendly to feel like he was ever the assertive wisecracking character of the comics to me. Speaking of, I'm also not super fond of how they portray his quips. I'm not sure if it's the writing or just Yuri's performance, but they come off as purposely bad. For example, a lot of them will end with him kinda giving up on the joke, like even he didn't think it was funny. I can't fully fault them since the modern books will have that happen too, but I much prefer when his quips are insults. The villains find him annoying because he's making fun of them, not because his jokes are bad. I also really dislike how he'll make jokes at inappropriate times, though I appreciate that they have MJ call him out on this. I think a lot of these issues are exasperated in the DLC. Peter wanting Sable to like him and the fist bump scene are notably cringy.
All I've got to say to that is if you've played Spider-Man PS4 enough times, you know that that's clearly not true. And also, what the fuck was with the comment of, oh, he makes jokes in inappropriate times? Like, yeah, no shit. He makes jokes to hide how tense of a situation it is, or hide his true intentions or feelings. Like, that's something that Spider-Man has done for years. I don't know why that's all of a sudden a problem. Also, Spider-Man does indeed make jokes at the villain's expense in this game, and with the case of Shocker, it actually works, since it unintentionally makes Shocker reveal information about the demons.
Do you dislike Yuri Lowenthal as Spider-Man?
Not necessarily, I more dislike the direction he's given his performance. The early behind-the-scenes footage is good.
To be honest, I don't know how you can dislike Yuri Lowenthal's Spider-Man. Like, the guy has been in pretty much fucking everything, especially if you like cartoons and what have you in the last few years. Like, he's such a versatile voice actor, and in Insomniac Spider-Man, in my opinion, it's his best performance ever. Like, he nails all aspects of the character, from the jokey and quippy to the serious and somber.
Are there any adaptations you think come close to the source material in terms of faithfulness?
My top picks are definitely the 90s animated series, the Neversoft games, Edge of Time, and Spider-Man 1 and 2 on console. Spectacular Spider-Man is also an honorable mention. I love the show but didn't include it on the main list because it changes a lot more with the lore than most of the others. Also, the episodes of the 60s show that are direct adaptations of the comics are also pretty good, though I wouldn't recommend them if you aren't willing to look past its dated nature.
How are all of those different adaptations accurate, but Insomniac isn't? Also, those adaptations have fuck all to do with each other, yet you're saying that they're all accurate to the comics, yet apparently Insomniac doesn't meet that criteria. Also, I find it very ironic that he says that the Spider-Man 1 and 2 games are accurate, but the Spider-Man 1 and 2 films aren't accurate. Let that sink in.
But that's as far as it went for me. Seeing occasional hate for Spider-Man PS4 on Twitter was the only criticism I'd hear.
I think it speaks volumes about an adaptation of the character where the only people who are willing to criticize it, or at the very least the only criticism that you've seen, are from the rats that are on Twitter who basically just chat shit about anything and everything just to get drama clicks. Honestly, that should speak volumes about how good the adaptation was.
That was until SK, someone I had an admittedly pretty good faith Twitter argument with the other day, released a video detailing all the faults of the writing in Spider-Man PS4. Now this video is 2 hours long, so I'm essentially going to faithfully explain most of the points made in this video.
I'm fairly certain you can't even watch this video now, because I'm pretty sure SK took it down, but you can still watch Colin's reaction to it, where he debunks some of the points made, and just talks about it in general. So, there's that at least. Also, I very much disagree with you, dude. Like, there is no way that you're able to accurately cover a 2 hours 20 long minute video in only a 10-minute video. The only thing that speaks volumes to me is that there weren't many good points made in the 2 hour long video, if 10 minutes is all you need to accurately present the points made.
And either agree and add more to what SK is saying, or disagree and give my reasons why. I'm not going to show clips from the video so that you're more encouraged to watch it yourself, and also because this video is 2 hours long.
Dude, get to the point already.
I encourage you to watch this video despite its length, as it can definitely use some more views and likes. He probably would have gotten a little bit of more of those views if he let me make the thumbnail. Like, look at this beauty from last week.
Okay, and what's wrong with that? The only thing wrong with this statement is that it makes you look like a smug, pretentious prick. Like, just because you have 100,000 subscribers, that doesn't mean shit. At the end of the day, people can post the most bland, generic thumbnails of gameplay or what have you, and it will still get hundreds of thousands of views. At the end of the day, your thumbnail is just one part that makes the... You know what? I'm not even gonna talk about that. Like, it's just such a dickhead thing to talk about. Like, what is wrong with his thumbnail? Like, with the Edge of Time or the Web of Shadows game. Like, it looks great. I think the original thumbnail for his video looks good as well. The beauty and the simplicity. Like, he just makes himself look like a dickhead.
So one of the first things SK does in this video is point out how Spider-Man PS4 does things that the other movies get criticized for, but somehow this game gets off scot-free.
It's a pretty bold claim. Do you mind showing points?
He says,
For those willing to criticize Batman for going against the no-killing rule in the DCEU, I don't want to hear excuses for Insomniac Spider-Man willing to commit to acts that will get people killed.
If the developers confirm that Peter is not killing anyone in this universe, then Peter is not killing anyone in this universe. It really isn't that deep. This is a fictional verse. Things apply differently.
throughout this video he notes several times where Peter does things that risk innocent people's lives. For example, him insisting on saving MJ during the Grand Central hostage situation. That is a completely valid criticism to make. That would be like if in Spider-Man 1, Peter saved MJ when Goblin dropped her, but then fished the kids out of the water below after getting her to safety.
The irony being that Tobey Spider-Man literally did save MJ before the kids. Like, how is this any different with Insomniac? What the fuck? Also, MJ is the love of Peter's life, and even in the comics, he consistently puts his loved ones above literally everyone. Like, he does that even in the old comics. Like, this is one of the core features of Peter Parker. And unlike MJ in the Raimi-verse, this MJ is actually competent and not a damsel in distress, and she actually diffuses the Devil's Breath, effectively allowing Peter to not worry about it and go after Martin Lee.
He also claims that Peter is straight up killing people in this game, like when he throws enemies out of speeding trucks. I disagree with this second part.
Thank you for pointing that out, because even in the Marvel Comics verse, and hell, even the MCU, there are a lot of things that physically don't make sense and wouldn't be possible in real life. I mean, the mere existence of the Hulk and Spider-Man should confirm that this shit ain't possible. Iron Man's suit functioning in real life to the, degree that it does in the Marvel-verse would not be possible. Thor's existence isn't possible, Like, there's a lot of things in this verse that doesn't make sense, and guess what? It's fiction. You have to suspend your sense of disbelief to get the most enjoyment out of it.
Here's another example. Falling can be pretty fatal for Spider-Man. There are several instances where Peter has almost fallen to his death. Falling from the sky and surviving the impact isn't really a normal thing Spider-Man can do.
Falling from great heights can indeed injure Spider-Man, potentially even seriously injure him, but when has it ever killed him? Like, please explain this to me. I can't honestly give you an example off the top of my head. Also, even Tobey Maguire's adaptation can literally fall off the clock tower with Doc Ock, fall onto the top of a speeding train, I might add, and get right back up and continue fighting. So it's pretty consistent that fall damage doesn't bother Spider-Man that much. Also, I'm gonna fast forward this next part of the video where he goes over, SK's takes, because at the end of the day, number one, it's a nitpick, and number two, the original video isn't even available anymore, so I'm pretty certain you couldn't watch it even if you tried.
I would like to say that I am not attacking SK, but there are some instances in this video where I just feel like he's nitpicking for little reason. For example, Spider-Man arrives at the scene of the shootout between cops and Fisk thugs. You're able to swing towards the scene until you maybe get about 200 meters away, and a cutscene plays where police are outgunned by Fisk thugs. The Fisk thugs are almost able to kill the cops until Spider-Man swoops in to save them. SK claims that Spider-Man sat there and watched the scene unfold until the very last minute. He then thoroughly criticizes the cops for putting themselves in stupid positions where Fisk thugs could kill them, and the Fisk thugs for not immediately killing the cops. Now, while I do agree that Spider-Man does take a comically long time to show up in this cutscene, I don't think it's because Insomniac wanted you to think that Peter sat there and waited. I think it's because Insomniac made this cutscene way too long. I think the point of this cutscene is to give Spider-Man a dramatic entrance and live off the hype of the opening of this game, and to make these cops look helpless so that Spider-Man looks more heroic. I just think that making the cops look helpless part was stretched out far too long. This cutscene is one of the examples of times I think SK spends way too much time focusing on unimportant issues, like the incompetence of police in the scene.
I think I've made it very clear so far that a lot of the points people made against this game are valid, but if that's the case, why have I spent the last section defending the game?
Probably because a lot of SK's reasoning in that video were indeed nitpicks. Like, yeah, that kinda is the crutch of the entire argument. Like, nitpicks aren't good reasonings for the most part.
That's because while I think SK makes a lot of good points about the characters and some plot points, I think a lot of his criticisms are misplaced. I think more of his criticisms should focus on bad character writing, like how he rightly critiques the game for MJ not being made out to be in the wrong for sneaking into dangerous areas several times in the game.
Number 1, Peter does call her out for it. Number 2, it's part of their arc where MJ demonstrates that just because she doesn't have spider powers, she's not made of glass. Like, yeah, you can chalk it up to being plot armor or incredibly stupid that she can infiltrate Sable bases and Oscorp Tower, but at the end of the day, she's a journalist and she's clearly skilled at what she does, even if the stealth sections are pretty dogshit. And number 3, poor Insomniac MJ. This poor bitch just can't catch a break in any of my response videos. Also, just skipping past the backpack collectibles segment, because at the end of the day, it's video game collectibles. Like, it's really not that deep, and I don't know why you would spend so long nitpicking these events. Like, I don't fucking get it.
Instead of being able to enjoy things like Spider Plushie. I think the reason I disagree with a lot of SK's points is because he made his video strictly about the story, without including how the gameplay intertwines with the story. If the backpacks appeared in the same way they do in a Spider-Man movie, I definitely wouldn't be able to excuse it because it's in a movie. But if the backpacks are in a video game, they're a fun collectible, and I can excuse that because it's more fun to collect little Easter eggs than to dismiss them because it's stupid from a story standpoint that Peter would do that.
Pretty much spitting facts right there. I've honestly got nothing to add.
In a movie, all you can focus on is the plot, but in a game with a story, there's more than just the story. I liked SK's video covering the game, and I agree with some of his points. I think too much of the video is spent focusing on things that don't really deserve the runtime.
Yeah, and I'm legitimately confused why you haven't talked about any of those points that you agree with. Like, the only one that you agree with was the MJ one, but that's easily proven false, so what else do you agree with in this 2-hour-long video? Like, please point out what you agree with, because so far you've just criticized his nitpicks and agreed with one thing. Like, this is kind of the issue I have with this guy. Like, he has, like, a decent premise, but his reasoning isn't all that good, or flimsy at best.
Now, do I think that all this hate for Spider-Man PS4 is warranted? Kinda.
This is probably the biggest contradiction in the entire video, because at the start he said that he really likes the game, but he also thinks that all of this unnecessary hate is justified, and even at the end of the video he's gonna say once again that he likes the game. So if you like the game, then why do you think that all of this unnecessary shit is justified? Like, going back to that Twitter user, you think all of his brain-dead comments are actually justified? Also, once again, stop portraying yourself as being a smug prick. It's really not a likable image for anyone to have, especially someone with a massive audience like yourself.
I think people like Nevermind are right for criticizing its version of Peter.
There's nothing wrong with having a contrary opinion as long as your reasoning is actually good, but saying shit on Twitter like, oh, Insomniac should lose the fucking license to Spider-Man, that's not a good look to have.
I think SK is right to point out how Peter's mischaracterization has massive implicative consequences.
Like, what do you mean? You barely brought up anything from his video. Like, are you actually gonna show the clips where SK says something that you agree with? Like, all you talked about was, oh, the nitpicks are false and the MJ comment. Like, you've not talked about anything.
But I guess I'm finally gonna get to the point of all this. You're wrong about Spider-Man PS4 because you're probably either in one or two camps. You either think the game is perfect or you think the game is dog shit.
Well, I guess I'm based then, because I'm not in either of those two camps. Do I get a fucking medal?
And I don't necessarily believe that either of those are true. You're wrong about Spider-Man PS4 because the game isn't perfect, but it's not that bad either.
You're wrong because the game isn't perfect, but it's not that bad either. Couldn't you say that about literally everything? It isn't perfect, but it isn't bad. Well, things that aren't actually bad, I suppose you can say that for, but like, I just don't understand. Like, the problem with this guy, it's the same problem I had with Gotham Paladins. Like, he's trying so hard to not upset people. He's trying to say, like, almost politically correct statements to not upset people, to avoid getting backlash. And it just makes your argument so flimsy. Like, come down on one side of the fence. Like, don't try hover in between. It doesn't work. Also, I do want to point out that I actually agree with this guy. I agree fully with his premise. The game is not perfect, but it's not dogshit either. And I know that now that I've said that, people are gonna flock to the comment section and be like, oh, you clickbaited the video, you're worse than people say you are. Yeah, that's a 5-year-old's mentality, and I'd advise you to stop. Has it ever occurred to you that you can have 5 different people who all have the same take, yet their reasoning could be completely different? One guy could hate the story, one guy could hate the gameplay, one guy could hate the web swinging, another could dislike the boss fights, and then you could have the 5th guy, where he believes that the swinging holds your hand way too much, the story is absolutely awful, Insomniac MJ is the worst girl ever put into fiction, and, you know, the combat is a joke. I feel like I'm describing someone, but for the life of me, their name is escaping my tongue. The point I'm making here is that it is okay to have a contrary opinion, and likewise it is okay for 2 people to have the exact same agreement, but that doesn't mean that their reasoning is good. That's the point I'm making with this. I agree with this guy, I agree with his overall premise. However, his reasoning is completely different to mine, and I think that his reasoning is not very good as a result. Like, he's basing his argument off of some random guy on Twitter who has pretty batshit crazy takes, and he's trying to agree but also disagree with SK, but not bringing up the actual good points, in inverted commas, that SK supposedly brings in his video. It feels like this video was just rushed. There's no other way I can say it. But anyways guys, what did you think of the video? If you enjoyed it, then feel free to subscribe to the channel. We're on the road to 5,000 subscribers. Leave a comment down below, I really enjoy reading them. And consider joining the Discord and joining the live streams, because at the end of the day, talking to you guys is a reward in and of itself. Have a great rest of your day guys, and I'll see you all in the next one.